In a world that often values strength and independence above all else, the concept of vulnerability can seem daunting and even weak. However, in reality, vulnerability is a powerful tool that can be used to build strong and meaningful connections with others. It is through our willingness to be open and authentic that we can truly connect with those around us on a deeper level. This book is dedicated to exploring the idea of vulnerability as strength and how it can be used to enhance our relationships and overall well-being. The journey to embracing vulnerability begins with an understanding of what it truly means to be vulnerable. It is not about being weak or helpless, but rather about having the courage to show our true selves to the world, flaws and all. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we are opening ourselves up to the possibility of rejection and hurt. But we are also opening ourselves up to the possibility of deep connection, understanding, and love. It is through our vulnerability that we can truly be seen and heard by others, and it is through this connection that we can find true strength. Throughout this book, we will explore the various ways in which vulnerability can be used to strengthen our relationships. We will learn how to cultivate vulnerability in ourselves, how to create a safe space for others to be vulnerable with us, and how to navigate the challenges and fears that come with opening ourselves up to others. Ultimately, the journey to embracing vulnerability is a powerful one. It requires us to face our fears head-on, to be honest with ourselves and others, and to let go of the need to always appear strong and put together. But in doing so, we will find that vulnerability is not a sign of weakness, but rather a sign of true strength. It is through our vulnerability that we can truly connect with others and create deep and meaningful relationships that can last a lifetime. So as we embark on this journey together, let us remember that vulnerability is not something to be feared, but rather something to be embraced. It is through our willingness to be open and authentic that we can build strong connections with others, and it is through these connections that we can find true happiness and fulfillment. As we begin our journey into understanding vulnerability as strength, it is important to first explore the concept of vulnerability itself. Many of us have been taught to view vulnerability as a weakness, something to be avoided at all costs. We have been conditioned to believe that showing our vulnerabilities makes us easy targets for hurt and harm, and so we learn to build walls around our hearts and keep our true selves hidden away. But what if vulnerability was not a weakness, but actually a source of great strength? What if by embracing our vulnerabilities, we are able to connect more deeply with ourselves and with others? What if vulnerability was the key to unlocking our true power and potential? In order to truly understand the concept of vulnerability, we must first acknowledge that vulnerability is not just about being open and honest about our emotions and struggles. It is also about having the courage to show our true selves to the world, to let down our defenses and be truly seen. It is about being willing to accept that we are not perfect, that we make mistakes, and that we have fears and insecurities just like everyone else. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we also allow ourselves to be truly authentic. We let go of the need to put on a mask and pretend to be someone we are not. We embrace our imperfections and our vulnerabilities, knowing that they are what make us human. And in doing so, we are able to connect more deeply with ourselves and with those around us. Vulnerability is not about seeking out pain or putting ourselves in harm's way. It is about being willing to take risks, to step outside of our comfort zones, and to be open to the unknown. It is about being willing to be seen for who we truly are, even if it means facing rejection or judgment. By embracing vulnerability, we also open ourselves up to greater possibilities for growth and transformation. When we are willing to show our vulnerabilities, we allow ourselves to be truly seen and understood by others. We create space for deeper connections and more meaningful relationships to flourish. In order to embrace vulnerability as strength, we must first learn to let go of the fear and shame that hold us back. We must be willing to face our fears head-on, to confront our insecurities, and to embrace our imperfections. We must be willing to be truly authentic, to show up as our true selves, and to let down our walls. It is through vulnerability that we can truly connect with others on a deeper level. When we are willing to show our vulnerabilities, we give others permission to do the same. We create a safe space for open and honest communication, where trust and intimacy can grow and thrive. But vulnerability is not always easy. It requires courage and strength to be truly open and honest with ourselves and with others. It requires a willingness to be vulnerable, even when it feels uncomfortable or scary. It requires a commitment to authenticity and a willingness to let go of the need to protect ourselves at all costs. As we continue on our journey to understanding vulnerability as strength, let us remember that vulnerability is not a weakness to be avoided, but a strength to be embraced. Let us remember that by being willing to show our vulnerabilities, we are able to connect more deeply with ourselves and with others. Let us remember that vulnerability is the key to unlocking our true power and potential. So as we move forward on this path of self-discovery and growth, let us be willing to embrace our vulnerabilities, to show up as our true selves, and to let down our walls. Let us be willing to take risks, to be open to the unknown, and to be truly authentic. And in doing so, let us remember that vulnerability is not a weakness, but a strength that can truly set us free. Chapter 2. As we journey deeper into the exploration of vulnerability as a strength, we cannot ignore the fear and resistance that often bubble to the surface when we consider opening ourselves up in such a raw and exposed way. It is natural to feel scared, to feel uncertain, to feel resistant to the idea of allowing ourselves to be vulnerable. In a world that often values strength as a facade of invulnerability, it can be daunting to peel away the layers and reveal our true selves to others. But it is precisely in pushing through that fear and resistance that we can find true liberation and connection. The discomfort we feel when faced with vulnerability is a sign that we are stepping outside of our comfort zone, that we are pushing past the walls we have built around our hearts. It is a sign that we are on the cusp of growth and transformation. So how do we navigate this fear and resistance? How do we embrace vulnerability as a strength despite the discomfort it may bring? It begins with acknowledging and honoring our feelings. Instead of pushing them down or trying to ignore them, we must face them head-on. We must sit with our fear and resistance, allowing them to rise to the surface without judgment or shame. In this process of acceptance, we start to recognize that our fear and resistance are simply protective mechanisms, ways our ego tries to shield us from potential harm. By acknowledging this, we can begin to gently let go of the need for such defenses. We can start to trust in our own strength and resilience, knowing that vulnerability is not a sign of weakness, but rather a testament to our courage and authenticity. It can also be helpful to remember that vulnerability is not a one-time act, but rather a continuous practice. It is a muscle that must be flexed regularly in order to grow stronger. Each time we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we chip away at the walls that separate us from others, creating deeper connections and fostering a sense of community and belonging. In facing our fear and resistance to vulnerability, it can be empowering to remind ourselves of the potential rewards that await on the other side. Through openness and authenticity, we invite others to truly see us, to witness our humanity, and accept us in all our flaws and imperfections. We create space for genuine connection and intimacy, fostering relationships that are built on trust and mutual respect. So let us not shy away from the discomfort that vulnerability may bring. Let us instead embrace it as a powerful tool for growth and connection. Let us face our fear and resistance head-on, knowing that by doing so, we are stepping into our true strength and authenticity. May we find the courage to be vulnerable, to be open, to be real. And in doing so, may we discover the beauty and power that lies within our own vulnerability. As we delve deeper into the importance of vulnerability in our lives, it is crucial to understand just how powerful this quality can be in building connections with others. In this chapter, we will explore the ways in which vulnerability can serve as a bridge between individuals, allowing for a deeper level of understanding, empathy, and compassion to flourish. When we think of vulnerability, we often associate it with weakness or fragility. However, vulnerability is not a sign of weakness, but rather a sign of courage and strength. It takes great courage to be vulnerable, to open ourselves up to the possibility of rejection and judgment. But when we are able to embrace our vulnerability, we create a space for genuine connection to take place. One of the key components of vulnerability is authenticity. When we are vulnerable, we are allowing ourselves to be seen for who we truly are, with all of our flaws, insecurities, and imperfections. This level of authenticity is essential in forming deep, meaningful connections with others. When we are able to show up as our true selves, we give others permission to do the same, creating a space for honesty, trust, and intimacy to thrive. In a world that often encourages us to put up walls and wear masks to protect ourselves, vulnerability can feel like a radical act of defiance. It challenges the notion that we need to be perfect or have it all together in order to be worthy of love and acceptance. By embracing vulnerability, we are challenging the status quo and redefining what it means to be strong and courageous. To embrace vulnerability is to embrace our humanity, with all of its messiness and complexity. It is a recognition of our shared experiences as human beings, our shared struggles, fears, and desires. When we are able to connect with others on a deeper level through vulnerability, we are able to see past the surface and recognize the humanity in each other. In our relationships with others, vulnerability serves as a powerful tool for fostering empathy and understanding. When we are able to share our own vulnerabilities with others, we create a space for them to do the same. This mutual sharing of vulnerabilities allows for a deepening of connection, as we are able to see and understand each other on a more profound level. It is through vulnerability that we are able to cultivate compassion for ourselves and for others. When we are able to let down our guard and show our true selves, we are able to see the humanity in ourselves and in others. This recognition of our shared humanity allows for a deepening of empathy and a greater capacity for love and understanding. In a society that often values strength and independence above all else, it can be easy to fall into the trap of believing that vulnerability is a sign of weakness. But the truth is that vulnerability is a strength, a powerful tool for connection and growth. When we are able to embrace our vulnerability, we are able to show up in our relationships with authenticity, courage, and compassion. As we continue on our journey of embracing vulnerability, it is important to remember that vulnerability is not a destination, but a practice. It requires ongoing courage and commitment to show up as our true selves, to be open and honest with ourselves and others. But the rewards of vulnerability are great, deeper connections, greater empathy, and a sense of shared humanity that transcends our differences. So let us continue to embrace vulnerability as a strength, a powerful tool for building connections and fostering empathy. Let us show up as our true selves, with all of our flaws and imperfections, knowing that it is through our vulnerability that we are able to truly connect with others. As we continue to practice vulnerability in our lives, may we be reminded of the courage and strength that it takes to be vulnerable, and may we be open to the connections and growth that come from embracing our true selves. In Chapter 4, we delve deeper into the importance of practicing vulnerability in various aspects of our lives in order to build authentic relationships. Vulnerability is not a sign of weakness, but rather a testament to our strength and courage to show up authentically in the world. One area where vulnerability can greatly impact our relationships is in our friendships. Oftentimes, we feel the need to put up walls or maintain a facade of perfection in order to feel accepted by our friends. However, true connection can only be achieved when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable and share our struggles, fears, and insecurities with those we trust. By opening up and being authentic with our friends, we not only deepen our relationships but also create a safe space for them to do the same. In our romantic relationships, vulnerability plays a crucial role in fostering intimacy and trust. It can be scary to let down our guard and reveal our true selves to our partners, especially when we fear rejection or judgment. However, by practicing vulnerability and sharing our feelings, desires, and fears with our partners, we create a deeper sense of connection and understanding. When both partners are willing to be vulnerable with each other, they can build a foundation of trust and intimacy that can withstand any challenge. In our professional lives, vulnerability can also be a powerful tool for building meaningful connections with colleagues and clients. When we are willing to be open about our strengths and weaknesses, we create an atmosphere of authenticity and trust that can lead to greater collaboration and innovation. By sharing our vulnerabilities in the workplace, we not only show our humanity but also create opportunities for growth and learning. Practicing vulnerability in different areas of life requires courage and a willingness to be seen and accepted for who we truly are. It may feel uncomfortable at times, but the rewards of authentic relationships built on trust and openness are immeasurable. As we continue to embrace vulnerability as a strength, we will find that our connections with others deepen and flourish in ways we never thought possible. So let us continue to practice vulnerability in all aspects of our lives, knowing that it is through our openness and authenticity that we can truly connect with others on a deeper level. Let us be willing to show our true selves, flaws and all, knowing that it is through our vulnerability that we can build relationships that are truly authentic and meaningful. Chapter 5. In our journey towards embracing vulnerability as a strength, we must confront and overcome the barriers that stand in our way. These barriers can take many forms, such as fear of rejection, past traumas, societal pressures, and our own limiting beliefs. But by facing these obstacles head-on, we can begin to build trust with ourselves and others in a deeper and more meaningful way. One of the first barriers to vulnerability is the fear of rejection. We have all experienced rejection at some point in our lives, whether it be from a romantic partner, a friend, or a family member. This fear can prevent us from opening up to others, for fear of being hurt or abandoned. However, by recognizing that rejection is not a reflection of our worth as individuals, but rather a reflection of the other person's limitations and insecurities, we can begin to let go of this fear and embrace vulnerability with courage and grace. Another barrier to vulnerability is past traumas. When we have been hurt or betrayed in the past, it can be difficult to trust others and open ourselves up to potential harm. But by acknowledging and healing from our past wounds, we can begin to release the hold that these traumas have on us and move forward with a renewed sense of strength and resilience. By practicing self-care, therapy, and forgiveness, we can begin to heal from our past traumas and create space for new connections to flourish. Societal pressures can also act as a barrier to vulnerability. In a world that often values strength and independence over vulnerability and connection, it can be challenging to break free from these societal norms and embrace our true selves. But by challenging these norms and embracing our vulnerability as a strength, we can inspire others to do the same and create a more compassionate and authentic world. By standing in our truth and sharing our stories openly and honestly, we can begin to break down the walls that separate us and build bridges of trust and understanding. Finally, our own limiting beliefs can act as a barrier to vulnerability. When we believe that we are unworthy of love, acceptance, or connection, it can be difficult to open ourselves up to others and truly be seen. But by challenging these beliefs and affirming our own worth and value, we can begin to cultivate a sense of self-love and compassion that will radiate outwards and invite others to do the same. By practicing self-compassion, mindfulness, and self-awareness, we can begin to dismantle the walls that we have built around our hearts and allow vulnerability to flow freely and authentically. By overcoming these barriers to vulnerability, we can begin to build trust with ourselves and others in a deeper and more profound way. By facing our fears, healing from our past traumas, challenging societal norms, and affirming our own self-worth, we can create space for vulnerability to thrive and connections to flourish. By embracing vulnerability as a strength, we can open ourselves up to a world of possibilities and create a more compassionate and authentic way of being. As we continue on our journey of exploring vulnerability as strength, it is important to dive deeper into the role of self-compassion in being open and vulnerable. Self-compassion is the act of extending the same kindness, care, and understanding towards ourselves that we would towards a friend in times of need. It is the practice of treating ourselves with the same level of love and compassion that we would offer to others. In a world that often values self-reliance and independence, self-compassion can be seen as a sign of weakness. But in reality, self-compassion is a powerful tool that can help us cultivate a sense of inner strength and resilience. By practicing self-compassion, we can develop a deep sense of self-worth and self-acceptance that allows us to be more open and vulnerable with ourselves and others. One of the key components of self-compassion is recognizing our common humanity. We are all imperfect beings, prone to making mistakes and experiencing pain. By acknowledging our shared humanity, we can cultivate a sense of connection with others that allows us to be more open and vulnerable. When we realize that we are not alone in our struggles, it becomes easier to extend compassion towards ourselves and others. Self-compassion also involves practicing mindfulness, or being present in the moment with an attitude of non-judgmental awareness. By bringing a sense of mindfulness to our thoughts and emotions, we can develop a greater sense of self-awareness and self-acceptance. This allows us to acknowledge our vulnerability without judgment or criticism, and instead, with a sense of curiosity and compassion. In our journey towards vulnerability as strength, self-compassion can serve as a guiding light, helping us navigate the ups and downs of life with grace and resilience. When we practice self-compassion, we are better equipped to face our fears and insecurities with an open heart and mind. We can embrace our vulnerability as a source of strength, rather than a sign of weakness. Self-compassion also allows us to build deeper connections with others. When we are able to extend compassion towards ourselves, we are more likely to be able to do the same for others. By cultivating a sense of empathy and understanding towards ourselves, we are better able to relate to the experiences and emotions of those around us. This creates a sense of emotional intimacy and connection that can deepen our relationships and foster a sense of belonging and community. In the practice of self-compassion, it is important to remember that it is not about being perfect or getting it right all the time. It is about being gentle and kind towards ourselves, especially in times of struggle and difficulty. It is about embracing our imperfections and showing ourselves the same level of care and compassion that we would offer to a loved one. As you continue on your journey towards vulnerability as strength, I encourage you to cultivate a sense of self-compassion in your daily life. Practice being kind and gentle towards yourself, especially when you are feeling vulnerable or exposed. Allow yourself to be open and honest about your thoughts and emotions, knowing that you are deserving of love and compassion. Remember that vulnerability is not a sign of weakness, but a source of strength and courage. By embracing your vulnerability with self-compassion, you can build deeper connections with yourself and others, and experience a greater sense of inner peace and fulfillment. Embrace your vulnerability with an open heart, knowing that true strength lies in being brave enough to show your authentic self to the world. In this chapter, we delve deep into the concept of vulnerability as a powerful tool for building connections with others. Cultivating empathy and understanding through vulnerability is a journey that requires courage, honesty, and a willingness to open our hearts to both ourselves and those around us. When we embrace our vulnerability, we allow ourselves to be seen in our most authentic and raw form. This openness creates a space for true connection to flourish, as it invites others to do the same. By shedding our masks and walls, we create an environment of trust and compassion that facilitates deeper relationships with those we encounter. It is often in our moments of vulnerability that we are able to truly connect with others on a spiritual level. When we share our fears, struggles, and insecurities with others, we create a sense of unity and understanding that transcends superficial interactions. By allowing ourselves to be vulnerable, we open the door for genuine empathy and compassion to flow freely between ourselves and those we interact with. Through vulnerability, we also create an opportunity for growth and healing. By exposing our vulnerabilities, we are able to confront our fears and insecurities head-on, leading to personal transformation and a deepening sense of self-awareness. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we embrace our humanity and connect with others on a soul level, fostering a sense of belonging and acceptance that is invaluable on our spiritual journey. In cultivating empathy and understanding through vulnerability, we also learn to let go of judgment and criticism towards both ourselves and others. When we embrace vulnerability, we recognize that we are all imperfect beings on a journey of self-discovery and growth. By extending grace and compassion to ourselves and others, we create a safe space for vulnerability to thrive, allowing for true connections to blossom. It is through vulnerability that we are able to tap into our true strength and resilience. By bravely sharing our vulnerabilities with others, we demonstrate courage and authenticity, inspiring those around us to do the same. When we embrace vulnerability as a strength rather than a weakness, we empower ourselves to navigate life's challenges with grace and compassion, knowing that we are supported by the connections we have cultivated through openness. As we continue to explore the power of vulnerability in building connections, we are reminded of the importance of compassion and understanding in our interactions with others. By approaching every interaction with an open heart and a willingness to be vulnerable, we create a space for deeper connections to flourish, fostering a sense of unity and interconnectedness that is essential on our spiritual journey. In conclusion, cultivating empathy and understanding through vulnerability is a powerful tool for building connections with others. By embracing vulnerability as a strength rather than a weakness, we create an environment of trust and compassion that fosters deep and meaningful relationships. Through vulnerability, we are able to tap into our true strength and resilience, inspiring others to do the same. Let us embrace vulnerability as a powerful tool for building connections and creating a more compassionate and understanding world. As we continue on our journey of embracing vulnerability as strength and building connections through openness, it is crucial that we also learn to recognize and honor boundaries. Boundaries play a significant role in our relationships with others and with ourselves. They serve as a way to protect our physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being. In this chapter, we will explore what boundaries are, why they are important, and how to respect them while still being vulnerable. We will learn how boundaries can actually enhance our ability to be open and authentic with others, rather than hinder it. Boundaries are essentially guidelines that we set for ourselves in terms of what we are comfortable with and what we are not. They are a way of communicating our limits to others and ensuring that those limits are respected. When we establish healthy boundaries, we are showing respect for ourselves and our needs. It is important to remember that boundaries are not rigid walls that shut others out, but rather flexible fences that allow for healthy interactions. By setting boundaries, we are taking care of ourselves and showing others how we wish to be treated. When it comes to vulnerability, honoring boundaries can be a delicate balance. It is possible to be open and honest with others while still respecting our own limits. In fact, being vulnerable within the confines of healthy boundaries can lead to deeper connections and stronger relationships. One way to honor boundaries while being vulnerable is to clearly communicate your limits to others. Let them know what you are comfortable with and what you are not. This can help prevent misunderstandings and ensure that your needs are respected. It is also important to listen to your intuition when it comes to boundaries. If something feels off or makes you uncomfortable, trust your instincts and take action to protect yourself. Your gut feelings are a valuable guide when it comes to setting and honoring boundaries. In some cases, it may be necessary to set firmer boundaries with certain individuals. This can be challenging, especially if you are used to being a people pleaser or avoiding conflict. However, it is essential to prioritize your own well-being and not allow others to overstep your boundaries. Remember that it is okay to say no and to advocate for yourself. You are worthy of respect and deserve to be treated with kindness and consideration. By standing up for yourself and honoring your boundaries, you are showing others that you value yourself and expect to be treated accordingly. In order to build connections through vulnerability, it is crucial to create a safe and supportive environment where boundaries are respected. This means being open and honest with others about your needs and expectations, and being willing to listen and empathize with their boundaries as well. By practicing empathy and understanding, we can cultivate a relationship built on trust and mutual respect. This allows for vulnerability to flourish in a healthy and sustainable way, leading to deeper connections and greater emotional intimacy. In conclusion, recognizing and honoring boundaries is a crucial aspect of embracing vulnerability as strength and building connections through openness. By setting healthy boundaries, communicating our needs, and standing up for ourselves, we can create a safe and supportive environment where vulnerability can thrive. Remember that boundaries are not meant to separate us from others, but to protect and nurture our relationships. By respecting our own limits and those of others, we can deepen our connections and cultivate a sense of trust and authenticity in our interactions. Practice self-care, trust your instincts, and prioritize your well-being. By honoring boundaries while being vulnerable, you can create deeper connections and build meaningful relationships that are based on mutual respect and understanding. Chapter 9. In our journey of building connections through openness and vulnerability, we will inevitably come across difficult conversations. These are the conversations that make our hearts race, our palms sweat, and our minds scramble for the right words to say. But it is in these moments of discomfort and unease that we have the opportunity to truly connect with others on a deeper level. Difficult conversations can arise in various aspects of our lives, whether it be with a loved one, a colleague, a friend, or even a stranger. These conversations often involve topics that are sensitive, taboo, or emotionally charged. They may revolve around differences in opinions, values, beliefs, or behaviors. They may bring up past wounds, traumas, or conflicts. They may challenge our sense of self or our understanding of the world. Navigating difficult conversations requires courage, empathy, and above all, openness and vulnerability. It is not easy to show up fully in these moments, to be willing to listen with an open heart, to speak our truth with authenticity, and to hold space for others to do the same. But it is in these moments of discomfort and vulnerability that we have the opportunity to foster deeper connections, to heal past wounds, and to grow as individuals. One of the key aspects of navigating difficult conversations with openness and vulnerability is to approach them with a sense of curiosity and compassion. Instead of viewing them as confrontations or conflicts to be avoided, we can see them as opportunities for growth and understanding. We can ask ourselves, what can I learn from this conversation? How can I deepen my connection with the other person? What fears or insecurities are coming up for me? And how can I work through them with compassion? Another important aspect of navigating difficult conversations is to practice active listening. This means listening not just with our ears, but with our hearts and minds as well. It means being fully present in the moment, without judgment or preconceived notions. It means tuning into the other person's emotions, body language, and unspoken words. It means reflecting back what we hear to ensure understanding and validation. In addition to active listening, it is essential to communicate with honesty and transparency. This means speaking our truth with vulnerability and authenticity, even if it is uncomfortable or risky. It means being willing to share our thoughts, feelings, and needs openly and honestly, without fear of rejection or judgment. It means being willing to express our boundaries, values, and beliefs with clarity and respect. Finally, navigating difficult conversations with openness and vulnerability also requires self-reflection and self-awareness. It means being willing to explore our own triggers, biases, and insecurities that may arise during the conversation. It means taking responsibility for our own emotions and reactions without projecting them onto others. It means being willing to apologize, forgive, and learn from our mistakes. As we navigate difficult conversations with openness and vulnerability, we may encounter resistance, defensiveness, or misunderstandings. We may face rejection, criticism, or conflict. But it is in these moments of discomfort and uncertainty that we have the opportunity to practice courage, empathy, and authenticity. It is in these moments that we have the opportunity to deepen our connections with others, to heal past wounds, and to grow as individuals. So let us embrace difficult conversations as opportunities for growth and understanding. Let us approach them with curiosity and compassion. Let us practice active listening, honesty, and transparency. Let us engage in self-reflection and self-awareness. And let us remember that vulnerability is not a weakness, but a strength. It is through our openness and vulnerability that we can truly connect with others on a deeper level and create meaningful relationships that last a lifetime. As we journey through life, we encounter many challenges and obstacles that test our strength and resilience. It is during these times of struggle that we often find ourselves feeling vulnerable and exposed. We may feel like we are not strong enough to face the difficulties that come our way, and we may try to shield ourselves from the pain and discomfort that vulnerability brings. However, what if I told you that vulnerability can actually be a source of strength? What if I told you that by embracing vulnerability, we can build deeper connections with ourselves and others? It may seem counterintuitive to think of vulnerability as a strength, but when we allow ourselves to be open and honest about our struggles and insecurities, we actually become more resilient. When we embrace vulnerability, we let go of the need to appear strong and invulnerable, and we allow ourselves to be truly seen and understood. This level of authenticity and openness can create powerful connections with others, as they see that we are not afraid to show our true selves. In order to build resilience through embracing vulnerability, we must first learn to acknowledge and accept our own vulnerabilities. This may mean facing our fears, insecurities, and past traumas head-on, and allowing ourselves to feel the pain and discomfort that comes with vulnerability. It may be a difficult and painful process, but it is necessary in order to truly heal and grow. Once we have acknowledged and accepted our vulnerabilities, we can begin to cultivate a sense of self-compassion and self-love. We can learn to treat ourselves with kindness and understanding, even when we are feeling at our most vulnerable. By developing a sense of self-compassion, we can begin to build inner strength and resilience that can help us navigate the challenges that life throws our way. In addition to cultivating self-compassion, we can also build resilience through seeking support from others. By allowing ourselves to be vulnerable with those we trust, we can build deeper connections and create a support system that can help us through even the toughest of times. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable with others, we give them permission to do the same, creating a cycle of openness and connection that can be truly transformative. As we continue on our journey of building resilience through embracing vulnerability, it is important to remember that vulnerability is not a sign of weakness, but rather a sign of strength. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we show ourselves and others that we are not afraid to face our demons head-on, and that we are willing to do the difficult work of healing and growing. By embracing vulnerability, we can build deeper connections with ourselves and others, and create a sense of resilience that can carry us through even the darkest of times. So, as we move forward on our journey, let us remember that vulnerability is not something to be feared or avoided, but rather something to be embraced and celebrated. Let us allow ourselves to be truly seen and understood, and let us build resilience through the power of openness and connection. By doing so, we can cultivate a sense of inner strength and courage that will carry us through whatever challenges come our way. As we continue our journey through the exploration of vulnerability as strength, it is important for us to dive deeper into the connection between vulnerability and creativity. Creativity is the essence of our inner being, the spark that ignites our passions and drives us to create something beautiful and meaningful in this world. And it is through vulnerability that we are able to tap into this wellspring of creativity and unleash our true potential. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we are opening up our hearts and minds to the infinite possibilities that lie within us. We are inviting the universe to guide us, to inspire us, and to co-create with us. In this state of openness and receptivity, our creativity flows freely and effortlessly, like a river that knows no bounds. But why is vulnerability so closely linked to creativity? It is because vulnerability is the gateway to our true selves, the bridge that connects us to our deepest desires and passions. When we are willing to be vulnerable, we are letting go of our fears and insecurities, and we are embracing our authentic selves with all our flaws and imperfections. In this state of vulnerability, we are able to access our innermost thoughts and feelings, to tap into our intuition and creativity, and to express ourselves in a way that is honest and true. We are able to see the world through a fresh pair of eyes, to explore new ideas and possibilities, and to connect with others in a way that is deeply meaningful and profound. Creativity is not just about painting a masterpiece or writing a best-selling novel. It is about how we show up in the world, how we express ourselves, and how we connect with others. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we are able to create authentic and meaningful relationships with others, to inspire and uplift those around us, and to make a positive impact on the world. But vulnerability can be scary. It can make us feel exposed and raw, like we are standing naked in front of the world with no protection. It can bring up all our fears and insecurities, making us doubt ourselves and our abilities. And yet, it is in this very vulnerability that we find our strength, our resilience, and our power. When we are willing to embrace our vulnerability, we are able to tap into our creativity in a way that is truly transformative. We are able to create from a place of authenticity and truth, from a place of deep connection and understanding. We are able to use our vulnerability as a source of inspiration, as a wellspring of creativity that never runs dry. So how can we cultivate our vulnerability as a source of creativity? The key is to practice self-compassion and self-love, to be gentle and kind with ourselves, and to cultivate a sense of openness and receptivity to the world around us. When we approach our creativity from a place of vulnerability and openness, we are able to access a deeper level of insight and understanding, to tap into the universal wisdom that flows through us all. It is important to remember that vulnerability is not a weakness, but a strength. It is a superpower that allows us to tap into our creativity and create a life that is truly fulfilling and meaningful. When we embrace our vulnerability, we are able to connect with others in a way that is authentic and genuine, to express ourselves in a way that is honest and true, and to make a positive impact on the world around us. So let us continue on this journey of exploration and discovery, of vulnerability and creativity. Let us open our hearts and minds to the infinite possibilities that lie within us, and let us create a life that is filled with love, joy, and meaning. Let us embrace our vulnerability as a source of strength, and let us create a world that is rich with creativity and connection. As we continue our journey towards embracing vulnerability as a source of strength, it is important to delve deeper into the impact that vulnerability has on personal growth and self-discovery. In Chapter 12, we will explore the transformative power of vulnerability in nurturing our authentic selves and building meaningful connections with others. Vulnerability allows us to strip away the layers of protection we have built around ourselves and reveal our true essence to the world. It is through vulnerability that we are able to cultivate a deep sense of authenticity and self-acceptance. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we open ourselves up to the possibility of experiencing pain, rejection, and disappointment. However, it is through these experiences that we learn and grow the most. Embracing vulnerability requires a great deal of courage and strength, as it means facing our fears and insecurities head-on. It means being willing to expose our vulnerabilities and imperfections to others, knowing that we may not always be met with warmth and acceptance. But it is in these moments of vulnerability that we are able to connect with others on a deeper level and cultivate genuine relationships based on trust and understanding. When we are vulnerable, we communicate to others that we are human, that we have fears and insecurities just like everyone else. This vulnerability creates a sense of empathy and compassion in others, as they see themselves reflected in our struggles and challenges. It is through vulnerability that we are able to break down the walls that separate us from one another and come together in a spirit of mutual support and understanding. In embracing vulnerability, we also allow ourselves to step into our own power and potential. When we are willing to be vulnerable, we are able to take risks and pursue our dreams with courage and conviction. We recognize that making ourselves vulnerable is not a sign of weakness, but rather a testament to our strength and resilience. It is through vulnerability that we are able to tap into our innate creativity and intuition and unlock our true potential. Through vulnerability, we are able to embark on a journey of self-discovery and personal growth. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we create the space for introspection and self-reflection. We are able to confront our fears and insecurities and uncover the limiting beliefs that may be holding us back from living our fullest lives. It is through vulnerability that we are able to shed the layers of conditioning and societal expectations that may have kept us from embracing our true selves. As we navigate the waters of vulnerability, it is important to remember that it is a journey, not a destination. Embracing vulnerability is an ongoing process that requires patience, self-compassion, and a willingness to embrace the discomfort that comes with being open and exposed. It is through this journey that we are able to cultivate a deep sense of self-awareness and self-acceptance, and truly connect with ourselves and others in a meaningful way. In conclusion, vulnerability is a powerful force that has the potential to transform our lives in profound and meaningful ways. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we open ourselves up to the possibility of growth, connection, and self-discovery. It is through vulnerability that we are able to cultivate a deep sense of authenticity and acceptance, and build genuine relationships based on trust and understanding. Embrace vulnerability as a source of strength, and watch as it transforms your life in ways you never thought possible. Chapter 13. In the journey of leadership and relationship building, there is a powerful tool that often gets overlooked or misunderstood: vulnerability. When we hear the word vulnerability, we may think of weakness or being exposed to harm. But in reality, vulnerability is a strength that can deepen connections and foster trust in both personal and professional relationships. As leaders, we are often taught to be strong, confident, and decisive. We are expected to have all the answers and to never show any signs of uncertainty. But true strength lies in the willingness to be vulnerable, to show our authentic selves and admit when we don't have all the answers. When we open ourselves up to vulnerability, we invite others to do the same, creating a space for honest communication and genuine connection. Vulnerability is not about being weak or passive. It is about being brave enough to let down our walls and show our true selves. It takes courage to be vulnerable, to expose our fears, insecurities, and imperfections. But in doing so, we show others that it is safe to do the same, that it is okay to be human and to have doubts and struggles. In the realm of leadership, vulnerability can transform the way we connect with our teams. When we are open and honest about our own challenges and failures, we show our team members that it is okay to make mistakes and to learn from them. We create a culture of trust and understanding, where everyone feels valued and supported. But vulnerability is not just important in leadership, it is crucial in all relationships. Whether it is with friends, family, or romantic partners, vulnerability is the key to deepening connections and fostering intimacy. When we are willing to be vulnerable with others, we allow them to see us as we truly are, flaws and all. We build trust, empathy, and understanding, creating strong and lasting bonds. When we are vulnerable, we open ourselves up to the possibility of rejection or hurt. But we also open ourselves up to the possibility of growth, connection, and love. By embracing vulnerability as a strength rather than a weakness, we empower ourselves to live authentically and to build meaningful relationships with those around us. So let go of your fear of being vulnerable. Embrace it as a gift, a tool for building deeper connections and fostering trust. Be brave enough to show your true self, imperfections and all. And watch as your relationships flourish, your leadership skills strengthen, and your life becomes richer and more fulfilling. As we continue our journey towards embracing vulnerability as strength, we come to a crucial realization: the power of sharing our vulnerabilities with others. It is in these moments of openness and transparency that true connections are forged, deepening our relationships with others and ultimately empowering ourselves. Sharing our vulnerabilities can be a daunting task. We may fear judgment or rejection, worrying that others will see us as weak or flawed. However, it is important to remember that vulnerability is not a sign of weakness, but rather a display of courage and authenticity. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable with others, we invite them into our innermost selves, creating bonds that are built on trust and understanding. By sharing our vulnerabilities, we not only deepen our relationships with others, but we also empower ourselves. When we open up about our struggles and insecurities, we allow ourselves to be seen and accepted for who we truly are. This acceptance is a powerful source of strength, as it enables us to be more authentically ourselves and to live our lives with greater confidence and purpose. When we share our vulnerabilities with others, we also give them permission to do the same. By being open and honest about our own struggles, we create a safe space for others to do the same. This exchange of vulnerability fosters a sense of connection and community, as we realize that we are not alone in our struggles and that we can support each other on our individual journeys. In sharing our vulnerabilities, we also learn valuable lessons about empathy and compassion. When we see others reveal their struggles and insecurities, we are reminded of our shared humanity and the universal experience of pain and suffering. This empathy allows us to connect on a deeper level with others, as we recognize that we are all facing similar challenges and that we can offer each other kindness and understanding. In addition to building connections with others, sharing our vulnerabilities can also have a profound impact on our own personal growth and healing. When we express our innermost thoughts and feelings, we release the emotional weight that we have been carrying, allowing us to move forward with greater clarity and purpose. By acknowledging our vulnerabilities and accepting them with grace, we free ourselves from the shame and self-doubt that hold us back, opening the door to self-acceptance and self-love. As we continue to embrace vulnerability as strength, let us remember the power of sharing our vulnerabilities with others. By being open and honest about our struggles and insecurities, we can deepen our connections with others, empower ourselves, and foster a sense of empathy and compassion. In doing so, we cultivate a community of love and support, where we can all thrive and grow together. Let us embrace vulnerability as a gift, a pathway to deeper connections and greater self-discovery. Chapter 15. In our journey towards embracing vulnerability as strength, we must recognize the importance of creating a culture of openness and vulnerability in our communities and organizations. When we cultivate an environment where individuals feel safe to share their fears, insecurities, and struggles, we not only foster deeper connections, but also empower each other to grow and heal. One of the key ingredients in fostering a culture of openness is trust. When we trust that others will hold space for us without judgment or criticism, we are more likely to open up and share our true selves. Trust is built through honesty, consistency, and empathy. When we are open and honest in our communications with others, we create a foundation of trust that allows for deeper connections to flourish. Another important aspect of creating a culture of openness is vulnerability. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we invite others to do the same. By sharing our own fears and struggles, we give others permission to do the same, creating a ripple effect of authenticity and connection. Vulnerability is not a sign of weakness, but rather a demonstration of courage and strength. When we are willing to let down our walls and show our imperfections, we create an environment where others feel safe to do the same. It is also important to recognize the power of active listening in building a culture of openness. When we truly listen to others with empathy and compassion, we validate their experiences and emotions. By being fully present and attentive, we show that we value their perspectives and care about their well-being. Active listening allows us to connect on a deeper level with others, fostering trust and understanding. Additionally, creating rituals and practices that encourage vulnerability can help to solidify a culture of openness. Whether it is through shared storytelling, group reflections, or vulnerability exercises, these activities provide opportunities for individuals to express themselves authentically and build connections with others. By incorporating these practices into our communities and organizations, we reinforce the value of openness and vulnerability in our interactions. Ultimately, building a culture of openness and vulnerability requires a collective effort. It is not enough for a few individuals to be open and vulnerable. It must be embraced and celebrated by the entire community or organization. By working together to create a safe and accepting space for vulnerability, we can cultivate deeper connections, foster empathy and understanding, and support each other in our growth and healing. As we continue on our journey towards embracing vulnerability as strength, let us remember the power of creating a culture of openness. By fostering trust, embracing vulnerability, actively listening, and incorporating rituals and practices that encourage authenticity, we can cultivate deeper connections and empower each other to be our true selves. Together, we can create a world where vulnerability is celebrated as a sign of courage and strength, where openness is valued as a pathway to healing and connection. Chapter 16. As we continue our journey in exploring vulnerability as strength, it is important to also understand the limits of vulnerability in maintaining healthy boundaries. While vulnerability can be a powerful tool in building connections and relationships, it is essential to recognize when vulnerability is taken too far and begins to compromise our own well-being. Boundaries play a crucial role in maintaining our emotional and mental health. They serve as the invisible lines that we set to protect ourselves from being taken advantage of, hurt, or manipulated. While vulnerability encourages openness and honesty, it is important to remember that not everyone deserves to access our vulnerabilities. When we open ourselves up to others, we expose our deepest fears, insecurities, and wounds. This level of transparency requires trust and respect from the people we share our vulnerabilities with. However, there are individuals who may not have our best interests at heart and may use our vulnerabilities against us. It is important to set clear boundaries with others to protect ourselves from harm. This is not a sign of weakness, but rather a demonstration of self-respect and self-care. Boundaries help us establish healthy relationships built on mutual respect and understanding. When we are able to communicate our boundaries effectively, we empower ourselves to maintain control over our own well-being. By setting boundaries, we communicate to others what we are comfortable with and what we are not. This allows us to protect ourselves from toxic relationships and situations that may compromise our mental and emotional health. In order to maintain healthy boundaries while still embracing vulnerability, we must first learn to recognize our own limits. It is important to be aware of our own needs and boundaries so that we can communicate them effectively to others. By understanding our own limits, we can prevent ourselves from being taken advantage of or manipulated. It is also important to listen to our intuition. Our inner voice often guides us in recognizing when a situation or relationship is crossing our boundaries. Trusting our intuition allows us to protect ourselves from harm and make empowered decisions that align with our values and beliefs. While vulnerability can bring us closer to others and deepen our connections, it is essential to exercise discernment in sharing our vulnerabilities. Not everyone is deserving of our trust and transparency. By setting healthy boundaries, we can ensure that our vulnerabilities are shared with those who will honor and respect them. In conclusion, vulnerability is a strength that can help us build meaningful connections with others. However, it is important to understand the limits of vulnerability in maintaining healthy boundaries. By setting clear boundaries, we empower ourselves to protect our well-being and establish relationships built on respect and trust. Trust your intuition, honor your boundaries, and embrace vulnerability as a tool for growth and connection. As we continue our journey towards embracing vulnerability as a path to healing and emotional well-being, we must explore the concept of vulnerability as a strength. In a society that often values strength as being synonymous with toughness and resilience, it can be challenging to view vulnerability in a positive light. However, it is crucial to understand that vulnerability is not a weakness, but rather a courageous act of opening ourselves up to others and allowing ourselves to be seen for who we truly are. When we embrace vulnerability, we are choosing to show our true selves to the world, without fear of judgment or rejection. This act of authenticity is incredibly empowering and can lead to deeper connections with others. By allowing ourselves to be vulnerable, we are letting go of the masks and barriers that we have built up over time and allowing others to see us in our raw, unfiltered state. It is important to remember that vulnerability is not about being reckless or putting ourselves in harm's way. It is about being open and honest with ourselves and others, and having the courage to speak our truth, even when it is uncomfortable or difficult. When we are vulnerable, we are showing our humanity and our imperfections, and in doing so, we are creating space for healing and growth. Many of us are taught from a young age to hide our vulnerabilities and to put on a brave face, even when we are struggling. However, this can lead to feelings of isolation and disconnection from others. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we are inviting others to do the same and creating a space for authentic, meaningful connections to flourish. Embracing vulnerability as a strength also allows us to release the burden of carrying our pain and struggles alone. When we open up to others and share our vulnerabilities, we are allowing ourselves to be supported and held in a loving and compassionate way. This sense of connection and belonging can be incredibly healing and can help us to navigate life's challenges with more grace and resilience. One of the key components of embracing vulnerability as a strength is learning to practice self-compassion. It is important to treat ourselves with kindness and understanding, especially when we are feeling vulnerable or exposed. By acknowledging our own humanity and embracing our imperfections, we can cultivate a sense of inner peace and acceptance that can help us to face life's ups and downs with more ease and grace. In order to fully embrace vulnerability as a strength, it is important to cultivate a sense of trust in ourselves and in others. This trust allows us to be open and authentic in our relationships, and to let go of the need to control or protect ourselves from potential harm. Trusting in the goodness of others and in the power of vulnerability can help us to build deeper and more fulfilling connections with those around us. As we continue on our journey towards healing and emotional well-being, it is important to remember that vulnerability is not a sign of weakness, but rather a courageous act of self-expression and authenticity. By embracing our vulnerabilities and allowing ourselves to be seen for who we truly are, we can create space for healing, connection, and growth to flourish in our lives. Let us continue to explore the power of vulnerability as a strength, and to embrace the beauty and authenticity that comes from allowing ourselves to be truly seen and heard. May we cultivate a sense of trust in ourselves and in others, and may we continue to practice self-compassion and kindness as we navigate life's challenges with grace and resilience. Embracing vulnerability is not always easy, but it is a powerful act of self-love and a courageous step towards healing and emotional well-being. Chapter 18. In the depths of our struggles and adversities, it can be easy to feel alone and isolated. We may feel as though no one else understands what we are going through, and that we must carry the weight of our burdens all on our own. But it is in these moments of vulnerability that we have the opportunity to connect with others on a deeper level, to build genuine and authentic relationships that can provide us with the support and strength we need to overcome our challenges. Vulnerability is often seen as a weakness, a sign of being exposed and unprotected. But in reality, vulnerability is a strength, a powerful tool that can help us break through the barriers that hold us back and connect with others in a way that is truly transformative. When we are open and honest about our struggles, we allow others to see us as we truly are, imperfections and all. And in doing so, we create a space for genuine connection and understanding to flourish. When we embrace vulnerability, we are able to let go of the facade of perfection that we so often feel the need to maintain. We no longer have to pretend that we have it all together, that we have all the answers, or that we are invulnerable to pain and suffering. Instead, we can allow ourselves to be seen as we truly are, with all of our fears, doubts, and insecurities laid bare. And in doing so, we invite others to do the same, creating a safe space for honesty and authenticity to thrive. It is through our vulnerabilities that we are able to form deeper connections with those around us. When we are willing to be open and honest about our struggles, we allow others to see us in a new light, to see the humanity that lies beneath the surface. And in return, we are able to see the humanity in others, to connect with them on a level that goes beyond superficial appearances and social niceties. It is in these moments of vulnerability that true connection is forged, bonds that can withstand even the toughest of trials and tribulations. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we open ourselves up to the possibility of healing and growth. By sharing our struggles with others, we can gain new perspectives and insights that can help us navigate our difficulties with grace and resilience. We can learn from the experiences of others, drawing on their wisdom and guidance to help us overcome our own challenges. And in doing so, we can find strength in our vulnerabilities, using them as stepping stones to a brighter and more hopeful future. But vulnerability is not always easy. It takes courage to be open and honest about our struggles, to lay bare our fears and insecurities for all to see. It requires us to let go of our pride and ego, to acknowledge that we are not perfect and that we do not have all the answers. And it calls on us to trust in the goodness of others, to believe that they will meet us with compassion and understanding, rather than judgment and criticism. It is in these moments of vulnerability that we are truly tested, that we are forced to confront our deepest fears and insecurities head-on. But it is also in these moments that we have the opportunity to experience the transformative power of vulnerability, to see firsthand the impact that openness and honesty can have on our relationships and our well-being. When we are willing to be vulnerable, we open ourselves up to new possibilities, to new ways of thinking and being that can lead us to a life of greater peace, joy, and fulfillment. So let us embrace our vulnerabilities. Let us see them not as weaknesses to be hidden and avoided, but as strengths to be celebrated and shared. Let us be open and honest about our struggles, allowing others to see us as we truly are, imperfect and flawed, yet capable of great love and resilience. And let us build connections with others through our vulnerabilities, forging bonds that can withstand even the toughest of challenges. In doing so, we can tap into the transformative power of vulnerability, using it to overcome our adversities and create a life of deeper meaning and purpose. As we near the end of our journey in exploring vulnerability as strength, it is important to take a moment to celebrate the incredible courage and power that lies within each of us when we embrace our vulnerability. In a world that often values toughness and stoicism, it can be easy to overlook the strength that comes from being open, honest, and vulnerable. Being vulnerable requires a deep sense of self-awareness and a willingness to let others see us as we truly are. It means allowing ourselves to be seen with all of our flaws and imperfections, knowing that we are worthy of love and connection just as we are. It takes courage to show up authentically, without the protective masks that we so often wear to shield ourselves from the judgment and criticism of others. But when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we open the door to truly meaningful and authentic connections with others. When we share our true selves with others, we create the space for them to do the same, fostering a sense of intimacy and understanding that is truly transformative. In being vulnerable, we invite others to see us not as perfect beings, but as fellow travelers on this journey of life, each with our own struggles and triumphs. Vulnerability is not a sign of weakness, but rather a reflection of our inner strength and resilience. It takes courage to be vulnerable, to show up fully and authentically in a world that often values perfection over authenticity. But in embracing our vulnerability, we empower ourselves to live with greater honesty, connection, and fulfillment. So let us take a moment to celebrate the strength that comes from being vulnerable. Let us honor the courage it takes to show up as we are, knowing that our vulnerability is not a liability, but a powerful source of connection and growth. May we continue to embrace our vulnerability as a sign of strength, knowing that in our openness and honesty, we create space for deeper connections, greater understanding, and boundless love. As we close this chapter on celebrating vulnerability as strength, let us carry with us the knowledge that true strength comes not from hiding our imperfections, but from embracing them with courage and grace. In our vulnerability, we find our greatest power, our deepest connections, and our most authentic selves. Let us continue to walk this path with open hearts and open minds, knowing that in our vulnerability lies our true strength. As we journey through our lives, we often encounter moments of vulnerability that can leave us feeling exposed and raw. We may feel hesitant to share our true selves with others, fearing judgment or rejection. However, what if I told you that vulnerability can be a source of strength and connection in your relationships? In this chapter, we will explore the transformative power of vulnerability in building deep and meaningful connections with others. We will learn how embracing our vulnerabilities can lead to greater authenticity and intimacy in our relationships, ultimately allowing us to cultivate more fulfilling connections with the people around us. Moving from vulnerability to strength in relationships is not an easy process. It requires courage and self-awareness to face our fears and insecurities head-on. However, when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable with others, we create a space for authenticity and empathy to thrive. When we hide behind walls of invulnerability, we limit our potential for true connection with others. By showing up as our authentic selves, flaws and all, we invite others to do the same. This exchange of openness and vulnerability builds a foundation of trust and understanding that can deepen our relationships in profound ways. In our society, vulnerability is often seen as a weakness. We are taught to put on a brave face and push through our struggles in silence. However, true strength lies in our ability to embrace our vulnerabilities and share them with others. It takes courage to be vulnerable, but the rewards are immeasurable. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we give others permission to do the same. We create a safe space for open and honest communication, where true connections can grow and flourish. When we show up authentically in our relationships, we build a foundation of trust that can withstand any challenge. Embracing vulnerability in our relationships also allows us to cultivate a deeper sense of empathy and compassion for others. When we are willing to share our struggles and insecurities with others, we create a space for understanding and support to flourish. This sense of connection can help us navigate even the most difficult times in our lives with grace and resilience. As we embrace vulnerability in our relationships, we also learn to let go of our need for perfection and control. We recognize that it is okay to not have all the answers, and that it is okay to ask for help when we need it. By releasing the pressure to be perfect, we create space for growth and transformation in our relationships. Moving from vulnerability to strength in our relationships is a journey that requires ongoing commitment and self-reflection. It is not always easy to open ourselves up to others, but the rewards of authentic connection far outweigh the risks. When we choose to show up vulnerably in our relationships, we create a space for deep and lasting connection that can enrich our lives in countless ways. In conclusion, vulnerability is not a weakness to be feared, but a strength to be embraced. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable with others, we create a space for authenticity, empathy, and connection to flourish. By moving from vulnerability to strength in our relationships, we can cultivate deeper connections that bring joy, fulfillment, and meaning to our lives. As we delve deeper into the power of vulnerability, we begin to understand the profound impact it can have in creating positive change not only within ourselves, but also in the world around us. In this chapter, we will explore the ripple effect of vulnerability and how it can lead to building connections and fostering growth. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we open ourselves up to the possibility of being hurt or rejected. This fear of vulnerability often stems from a place of self-protection, where we believe that by hiding our true selves, we can shield ourselves from pain. However, what we fail to realize is that vulnerability is not a sign of weakness, but rather a strength that allows us to connect with others on a deeper level. When we are willing to show our vulnerabilities, we are showing others that it is okay to be imperfect, that it is okay to struggle, and that it is okay to seek support. This act of authenticity creates a ripple effect, inspiring others to do the same. As we begin to let down our walls, we create opportunities for genuine connections to form, leading to a sense of belonging and acceptance. The ripple effect of vulnerability can be seen in various aspects of our lives. In our relationships, when we are open and honest about our fears, insecurities, and struggles, it invites our loved ones to do the same. This level of vulnerability fosters trust and emotional intimacy, strengthening the bond between individuals. In our professional lives, vulnerability can also have a transformative impact. When we are willing to admit our mistakes, ask for help, and share our challenges with colleagues, it creates a culture of openness and collaboration. This type of vulnerability can lead to innovative solutions, increased productivity, and a more cohesive team dynamic. Furthermore, the ripple effect of vulnerability extends beyond our immediate circle of influence. When we are vulnerable in our interactions with others, we inspire them to do the same. This creates a ripple effect that spreads throughout our communities, encouraging empathy, compassion, and understanding. As we reflect on the ripple effect of vulnerability, we begin to see the immense power it holds in creating positive change. By embracing our vulnerabilities, we not only empower ourselves, but we also inspire others to do the same. This act of courage and authenticity has the potential to transform our relationships, our workplaces, and our communities. In conclusion, vulnerability is not a sign of weakness, but a strength that can create a ripple effect of positive change. By embracing our vulnerabilities and being open and authentic with others, we can foster connections, build trust, and create a more compassionate and empathetic world. Let us continue to embrace vulnerability as a source of strength and a catalyst for growth and transformation in our lives. Chapter 22. Sustaining connections through ongoing openness and vulnerability. As we continue on our journey of embracing vulnerability as strength, we must also recognize the importance of sustaining connections through ongoing openness. It is not enough to simply open up once and then close ourselves off again. True vulnerability means continuously allowing ourselves to be seen and heard by others, even when it feels uncomfortable or scary. Sustaining connections requires us to constantly practice vulnerability in our relationships. This means being open about our thoughts, feelings, and experiences with those we care about. It means showing up authentically and honestly, even when it's easier to hide behind a mask of strength and perfection. When we commit to being consistently vulnerable with others, we deepen our connections and build trust in our relationships. We show others that we are willing to let down our walls and be truly seen, which in turn encourages them to do the same. This mutual vulnerability creates a strong foundation for intimacy and connection to grow and thrive. But sustaining connections through ongoing openness also requires us to be mindful of our own boundaries and self-care. It's important to recognize when we are feeling overwhelmed or drained from being vulnerable, and to give ourselves the space and time we need to recharge and regroup. We cannot sustain connection with others if we are neglecting our own well-being in the process. In order to maintain healthy and sustainable connections, we must also practice active listening and empathy in our relationships. It's not enough to simply share our own vulnerabilities. We must also be willing to hold space for others to share theirs. This means truly listening to and validating their experiences, without judgment or the need to fix or change them. By practicing ongoing openness and vulnerability in our connections, we create a safe and supportive environment where both parties feel seen, heard, and valued. We strengthen our bonds with others by showing up authentically and compassionately, and by allowing ourselves to be truly known and accepted for who we are. In sustaining connections through ongoing vulnerability, we also cultivate a sense of resilience and courage within ourselves. We learn to navigate the ups and downs of relationships with grace and humility, knowing that our willingness to be vulnerable is a strength, not a weakness. We build a sense of inner strength and confidence that allows us to show up authentically in all areas of our lives, knowing that we are worthy of love and connection just as we are. So I encourage you to continue practicing vulnerability in your relationships, and to sustain connections through ongoing openness and authenticity. Trust that by showing up as your true self, you are creating space for deep and meaningful connections to flourish. Embrace vulnerability as a strength, and watch as your relationships and your sense of self deepen and grow in ways you never thought possible. As we come to the conclusion of this journey of embracing vulnerability as a source of strength and connection, let us take a moment to reflect on all that we have learned and experienced. Throughout this process, we have delved deep into our inner selves, exploring the fears and doubts that have held us back from truly opening up to others. We have faced our vulnerabilities head-on, recognizing that they are not weaknesses to be hidden, but strengths to be embraced. By allowing ourselves to be vulnerable, we have opened doors to deeper connections with those around us. We have cultivated a sense of authenticity and honesty in our relationships, which has allowed us to truly be seen and understood by others. Through vulnerability, we have created a space for empathy and compassion to flourish, leading to more meaningful and fulfilling connections with both ourselves and others. It is through vulnerability that we have discovered our true power. It takes courage to be vulnerable, to show up as our authentic selves, flaws and all. But in doing so, we have found a sense of liberation and freedom that comes from living with openness and honesty. We have learned that vulnerability is not a sign of weakness, but a badge of courage that sets us apart as strong and resilient individuals. As we move forward from this point, let us continue to embrace vulnerability as a source of strength in our lives. Let us resist the temptation to build walls around our hearts and instead choose to open ourselves up to the world around us. Let us remember that it is through vulnerability that we are able to truly connect with others, to build bonds that are deep and enduring. May we always remember the lessons we have learned on this journey, and may we continue to grow and evolve as we walk the path of vulnerability with grace and courage. And may we always remember that in our vulnerability lies our greatest strength.